My name is Nicole Hudson. I am 45 years old, and after many years working as a nurse, I now dedicate my life to the ministry in Sacramento, California. I want to share my testimony about a near-death experience that profoundly transformed my view on fasting, prayer, and the spiritual realm. First of all, I would like to know where you are listening to this message from. Knowing that we are connected, even from a distance, brings a special comfort. Also, don't forget to react, like, comment, and share your thoughts on this story. Let's create a space for respectful exchange together, where everyone can learn and grow. It all began on September 12, 2023. I was on the 7th day of a water-only fast, a practice I felt deeply guided to by the Holy Spirit. Although I had always considered fasting an essential spiritual discipline, this time there was something different, almost palpable. This fast seemed to have a divine purpose that I did not yet understand. That morning at 5:30, I got into my car to go to a prayer meeting at the church. The streets were calm, and a light rain was falling, a rare phenomenon in Sacramento in September. As I listened to praise songs in the car, I felt an extraordinary closeness to the presence of God. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony, but as I turned onto Medicine Avenue, my life changed drastically. Suddenly, a drunk driver sped up, ignored a red light, and collided with the driver's side of my car. The impact was devastating. Later, I learned that the accident caused severe internal bleeding, multiple organ failure, and cardiac arrest for exactly 17 minutes and 23 seconds. What I experienced during those 17 minutes was more real than anything I had ever known in my life. The transition was instantaneous. One moment, I was in the wrecked car. The next, I was floating above the scene. I could see everything with extraordinary clarity. No, the first responders struggling to revive me, the police redirecting traffic, and even the driver responsible for the accident, sitting on the curb with his head in his hands. Then something indescribable happened. The scene around me began to fade, and I was pulled upward, passing through a tunnel of light so intense it seemed alive. It was a sensation that transcended everything I knew on earth. There was no fear or pain, but a profound peace and a love so immense that it permeated every part of my being. As I moved through this tunnel, I realized I was no longer limited by my physical body, but paradoxically felt more alive and whole than ever. My spiritual senses were heightened to a level I would never have believed possible. Then, I emerged in a place I can only describe as the outer courts of heaven. It was a beauty that defied words, unimaginable colors, melodies that seemed to arise from all directions, and a light more radiant than the sun. Yet, it did not hurt the eyes. However, what impressed me most was what I observed happening between heaven and earth. From where I was, I saw something I would never have believed possible. Threads of golden light connecting earth to heaven. They were not just random lines, but spiritual pathways, formed by people in fasting and prayer. It was like observing a spiritual map of the world, with its luminous connections filling the void between the physical and spiritual planes. Then there was a voice. The voice of Jesus. Before I even saw him, I knew it was him. His voice was not just a sound. It was like a resonance that filled my entire being. He said, "Nicole, I brought you here to reveal to you what eyes have not seen and ears have not heard." At that moment, he appeared before me. Jesus was both familiar and indescribably glorious, completely different from any image I had ever seen. His presence radiated love, power, and infinite authority. His eyes, so deep, carried a love that made me feel completely known and unconditionally loved. He looked and said, "Observe." Suddenly, a series of visions began to unfold before me, forever changing my understanding of fasting. The first vision showed how fasting affects the spiritual atmosphere. I saw that when a person enters into sincere fasting, they create what seemed to be an opening in a dark and heavy layer that covered the earth. Through these openings, the light and power of heaven could circulate more freely. Jesus explained, Many of my children do not understand the power they possess through fasting. When you fast with a pure heart, seeking me in my kingdom, you become a partner of heaven in an unimaginable way. Next, Jesus showed me the fasting I was doing before the accident. Each day of fasting created a clearer and stronger channel between heaven and earth. It was like watching a spiritual muscle develop in strength. I saw how my prayers during fasting had more authority, breaking spiritual barriers that could have taken months or years to overcome. Then he took me to what he called the halls of time, where I could see believers throughout history in moments of transformative fasting. I saw Moses during his 40-day fast receiving the 10 Commandments, but this time I saw the spiritual dimension. His fast had created a space where the glory of God could manifest fully. I saw Daniel and his fasts, facing dark spiritual forces that dominated entire regions. I also saw countless anonymous believers whose fasts changed spiritual atmospheres and redirected historical events without them knowing. Jesus looked and said, "Nicole, I reveal these things to you because my church is entering a time where understanding the power of fasting will be crucial. The battles to come will not be won by prayer alone. Fasting must be restored to its rightful place." Then he showed me something even deeper: the power of collective fasting. I saw how groups of believers fasting together generated spiritual storms of power, capable of changing entire atmospheres over cities and nations. Jesus explained that in the future these collective fasts would be essential to achieving significant spiritual breakthroughs. However, he also gave a warning: not all fasts carry the same weight in the spiritual realm. Jesus showed me fasts done for the wrong reasons, for show or obligation, which had little or no spiritual impact. In contrast, fasts done with humility, true repentance, and a pure desire to draw closer to God unleashed unimaginable spiritual power. Finally, something Jesus revealed surprised me deeply: the effect of fasting on our spiritual being. He said that when we fast, our spiritual senses undergo a kind of renewal and maturation. It is as if every fiber of our being is refined to align more fully with God's will and the movement of heaven. During this experience, I saw how long periods of fasting profoundly transformed people. They created new spiritual pathways, allowing believers to operate at higher levels of discernment and spiritual authority. Even after the fast ended, Jesus explained, "Many of my children see fasting as a means to convince me to act, but fasting is not about that. It is a way to align and partner with what I am already doing. When you fast, you adjust your spiritual frequency to heaven." He also revealed how fasting influences spiritual warfare. I observed believers fasting and being covered by a more robust spiritual armor. Their prayers during fasting became precise and powerful weapons, hitting spiritual targets with extraordinary effectiveness. However, Jesus warned me, the enemy knows the power of fasting and seeks to attack those who practice it. That is why it is essential to seek protection under my blood and my word. Do not fast according to your strength or human understanding alone. Jesus then highlighted the relationship between fasting and spiritual authority. I saw how each day of fasting increased a believer's authority in prayer and spiritual warfare. It was like witnessing someone being promoted in the ranks of the heavenly army. These words carried more weight, and these prayers had a deeper impact. "Remember," said Jesus, "this authority is not earned by merit, but is granted by me." Fasting exposes you to receive this authority, but it always comes from me. Another impressive vision was about how fasting creates spiritual reservoirs. They looked like reservoirs filled with spiritual provisions accumulated over regular periods of fasting. The reservoirs served as a source of strength and support during times of trial. I saw how those who adopted a lifestyle of constant fasting had significant spiritual reserves, standing firm in difficult times. Jesus also showed me how fasting enriches worship. During periods of fasting, our worship seemed to exhale a special fragrance in the heavens, an aroma that deeply pleased God. It was as if the sacrifice of fasting added a unique dimension to our prayers and praises. When my children worship me while fasting, explained Jesus, they create a harmony with heavenly worship. The sacrifice of praise, combined with that of fasting, carries a singular power. However, Jesus' tone became more serious as he revealed the times to come. I saw challenges and trials that would require God's people to operate at high levels of spiritual authority, accessible only through the combination of prayer and fasting. He said, "The days to come will require deep spiritual preparation. Fasting will not be optional, but an essential weapon for spiritual warfare. It must be understood and used wisely." I also saw how fasting breaks dark spiritual chains symbolizing bondage, addictions, generational curses, and oppression. When someone fasts with sincere faith and pure intentions, their chains begin to weaken until they completely break. The most exciting moment was when Jesus showed me how our fasting connects to his ongoing ministry of intercession. It is as if, by fasting, we join him in a special way in his work of intercession for humanity. I perceived the deep joy this brought him, a true joy to see his children renouncing themselves to participate in his purposes. He said, "Nicole, when my children fast with pure hearts, it touches my heart deeply. It is not about earning my love, for you already have it fully. It is about aligning and participating more deeply in my projects." Finally, Jesus revealed how fasting shapes our spiritual legacy, leaving a legacy that transcends time and resonates in eternity. By fasting, it is as if we are clearing the wells of our spiritual legacy, removing the blockages that prevented blessings from flowing. Spiritual wells that had been obstructed for generations. Jesus showed that fasting creates spiritual bridges connecting different aspects of his work and purpose. These bridges were like highways through which God's power flowed and continued to operate, often long after the fast ended. Jesus also revealed the principle of spiritual multiplication. In fasting, when we fast with pure hearts, God often amplifies the spiritual impact in a way we cannot imagine. I saw how the faithful fasting of a single person could transform an entire community, generating cascading effects in the spiritual realm that lasted for generations. The spiritual impact of fasting, explained Jesus, goes far beyond what you can see in the natural. Often, the greatest fruits of your fasting will only be revealed in eternity. Another crucial lesson was the relationship between fasting and spiritual timing. Sometimes God calls us to fast, not for immediate results, but to prepare us for something he knows is coming. I saw how fasting spiritually strengthened people even before they faced challenges. "In the times to come, my children will need to learn to fast preventively," said Jesus, "not just in response to crises, but as preparation for what I know is coming." Fasting also sharpens our spiritual antenna, increasing our ability to discern the voice of the Holy Spirit. I saw how those who adopted fasting as a lifestyle developed a greater sensitivity to divine direction. But what Jesus showed me most importantly was how fasting deepens our intimacy with him. Fasting, he said, creates space in your soul for more of my presence. It is not just about spiritual power, but about knowing me better. When my time in heaven was coming to an end, Jesus gave me one last crucial instruction. He stated that we are entering times where understanding the power of fasting would be more important than ever. Mon, I call my people to biblical fasts in preparation for the days to come. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them that time is short and these truths must be understood. With a look of love and tenderness that seemed to flood my mind, Jesus reminded me that the power is not in fasting itself. The power is in me. Fasting positions you to work in partnership with what I am already doing. Then in the blink of an eye, I returned to my body in the hospital. To the medical team, I returned to life after more than 17 minutes was an incomprehensible miracle. I was completely restored with no brain damage or sequelae. 3 months later, during a prolonged period of fasting and prayer, I had another profound experience. This time it was not caused by an accident but by an inexplicable cardiac event while praying alone in the room. Again, God had something extraordinary to reveal to me. My heart stopped for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. During that time, I was once again transported to this familiar realm of living light. As soon as I entered this space, I knew why God had brought me back. Oh, there was still something He wanted to reveal to me about fasting. Jesus was there, His presence as overwhelming and beautiful as before. However, this time, there was even greater intimacy in His face, like a friend eager to share a precious secret. "Nicole," He said, "I brought you back to show you the fruit of what you have learned." Then, a panoramic vision unfolded before me. It was the spiritual impact that had occurred since I began sharing my testimony about fasting. I saw streams of light spreading across the earth, the same spiritual channels I had observed in my first experience, multiplying in intensity. Each light represented someone who began practicing biblical fasting after hearing what Jesus showed me. "Observe," He said, and I saw lives transformed, addictions broken, healings manifested, relationships restored, all through the combined power of prayer and biblical fasting. What touched me most were the intimate moments between these people and Jesus during their fasting. Each sacrifice created a special space for deep communion with Him. "Do you see?" asked Jesus. "What I showed you was not just for you. It was for my beloved church, my precious bride. Each truth you shared planted seeds that are now bearing fruit." Then He showed me something that brought tears to my eyes. Whenever someone applied the truths about fasting, it created a ripple effect in the spiritual realm, impacting not only their life, but also future generations. These ripples were there like waves of awakening, preparing the way for something greater. "The days to come," said Jesus, "will require my people to walk in a level of spiritual authority they have never experienced before. What I showed you about fasting is not optional. Oh, it is an essential preparation for what is to come." He revealed how the collective understanding of fasting created a new spiritual dynamic in His church. As more and more believers adopted biblical fasting, their combined spiritual authority pushed back the darkness in a way never seen before. "Tell them again," Jesus requested, "but this time with the authority of someone who has seen the fruits. Tell them that I am calling my church back to biblical fasting, not as a religious duty, but as preparation for the greatest outpouring of my Spirit they have ever seen." I saw how each person who embraced these truths became a spiritual beacon. Their light pushed back the darkness in their family, community, and nation. However, Jesus insisted once again, "The power is not in fasting itself. It is in my faithfulness and the rare humble sacrifice of my children. Remember," said Jesus, "as my time up there was coming to an end, I did not show you these things just so you could understand them. I showed them so you can help my people understand. The time is more advanced than they realize, and my church must be ready before everything disappears." He left one last message. "Tell them that I do not call them to fast to earn my love. They already have it fully. I call them to fast because I want to entrust them with my power. The darkness is increasing, but through prayer and fasting my light will shine even brighter in you." When I returned to my body for the second time, I was even more convinced of God's purpose in allowing me to experience His revelations. Every detail He showed me about fasting not only resonated with the truths of the Scriptures, but also proved true in many believers who began to apply these practices. This second experience left me with a deeper conviction. Jesus calls His church to rediscover the power of biblical fasting, not as an attempt to manipulate God or earn His favor, but as a means to position ourselves to partner with heaven in crucial times. The question is not whether Jesus calls us to fast. He clearly does. The real question is, how will we respond? Will we respond to His call to prepare ourselves, through prayer and fasting, for the days to come? Will we embrace this powerful spiritual key He has entrusted to us? Or will we allow fear and complacency to hold us back? If you are reading these words, know that it is not by chance. Jesus invites you to a deeper understanding of fasting, not as a religious duty, but as an opportunity for a transformative partnership with heaven. Do not let doubts or distractions prevent you from living this truth. The spiritual realm is more real and powerful than anything we can see with our physical eyes. And through biblical fasting, we can align with heaven's purpose in a way that will impact not only our lives, but also future generations. The time is now. Jesus calls, and he awaits the response of his church.